The colonel yelled, "Someone get control of this!" And the command room erupted. Radio screamed, monitors flashed red. A dozen officers stumbled over each other trying to salvage what was left of the mission. But in that chaos, one figure didn't move. She simply rose, quietly. And when she did, the room went still. You're watching The Storyscape, where hidden heroes rise when the noise is loudest. Where in the world are you watching from? The operations center at Forward Base Rains had never sounded like that before. It was meant for precision, the clicking of headsets, the low hum of coordination. Tonight, it was panic. A strike team was trapped behind enemy lines, their extraction bird down, comms fading by the second. Every screen glowed with maps and telemetry, but none of it made sense anymore. The colonel barked orders that no one could execute fast enough. And in the middle of that command storm stood a woman no one noticed until now. Her name wasn't on the roster anymore. She was just Carter, liaison, civilian clearance, temporary assignment. Her badge didn't say she once sat in an A-10 cockpit years ago, before her record disappeared into black ink and sealed files. She'd been brought in to observe coordination protocols, which meant stay quiet, take notes, don't interfere. But the colonel's voice was breaking. "We're losing contact. Where's the satellite feed?" he barked, slamming a headset onto the table. The screens flickered again, static and smoke one after another. The SEAL team's heart rate monitors flatlined across the display. For a moment, the air felt heavier than the walls themselves. Carter's gaze slid to the top monitor, the feed still faintly pulsing from the down strike zone. A grainy thermal image showed movement. The team was alive, but surrounded. She could almost feel the distance, the terrain, the weapon placements. The pattern was too familiar. Desert combat, narrow ridgeline, triple anti-armor setups. She'd seen it before, from a cockpit. Her breath slowed as instinct took over where training once ruled. Then came the shout that split the room. "Someone get control of this!" The colonel's hand slammed the desk again, and that's when she moved. No one expected it, not the tech officers frozen at their consoles, not the comms chief who still fumbled with frequencies. Carter stood, pulled the auxiliary headset toward her, and switched channels with the kind of precision only muscle memory allows. Her voice was calm, almost too calm for the noise around her. "Channel 6 open, redirecting uplink through Alpha Band Reserve. Give me the drone feed." The colonel spun toward her, startled. "Who authorized?" But before he could finish, the main display flickered to life. The ridge reappeared. Through the static, figures moved, SEALs crawling for cover, tracer fire arcing through the darkness. Carter leaned closer to the mic. "Echo team, this is command relay. You copy?"
A voice crackled back, shaky but alive. "Who the hell is this?" She didn't answer. "Mark your north ridge. You've got thermal signatures closing from 220. Drop smoke on my mark." She wasn't supposed to be giving orders, but no one else could save them. The colonel froze mid-sentence. Around him, the room's chaos slowed, like gravity itself was bending toward her tone. The drone's camera zoomed, catching the moment the SEALs threw smoke grenades, creating a wall of confusion for the encroaching enemy line. Carter's fingers danced across the interface, rerouting command assets the way she used to manage a weapons suite. The only thing missing was the hum of engines beneath her. "Colonel," she said finally, not asking for permission, "we need eyes over that ridge. The drone's too slow. You've got a warthog on standby, right?" He blinked, uncertain. "That aircraft's not cleared for, then clear it." Her tone wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The colonel looked at her like he was seeing a ghost, and maybe he was, because for a second in the flicker of red warning lights, he could almost see her in flight gear again. Outside, the roar of turbines ignited across the base. Someone had followed her command, but the colonel hadn't given the order. The sound hit first, a deep rolling vibration that shook the glass panels above the control deck. Every head turned toward the launch bay cameras as dust and heat waves distorted the view. The colonel's jaw tightened. "Who authorized that ignition?" he snapped. No one answered, but everyone knew. Down in the hangar, the air shimmered from jet exhaust. The A-10 on standby, tail number 2874, had been cold for weeks. Maintenance tags still hung from the landing gear. Yet its engines were spooling up, twin turbines screaming awake like something ancient and angry. Mechanics ran toward the noise, waving, shouting, but a single figure was already climbing the ladder. Carter moved like she'd done it 1,000 times, because she had. Her hand slid along the frame, finding the familiar scuffs where paint met metal. The smell of hydraulic oil and heat made her heart steady. One motion. Helmet on, cables connected, switch flips, and the cockpit came alive with amber glow. The HUD blinked to green. In the command room, the colonel watched to feed in disbelief. "He can't. She's not cleared." His words fell apart as the A-10's front gear lifted, nose tilted toward the runway. "Sir," one of the techs whispered. "She bypassed the launch lock from her console. She must have known the codes." Of course she did. She'd written them. The hangar doors groaned open. Outside, the desert night was streaked with tracer fire miles away, the SEAL team's last position. Carter's voice came over the open channel, calm and clipped. "This is Cross 2784, requesting immediate tactical clearance." The colonel leaned toward the mic. "Carter, stand down. That's an order." She didn't even blink. "Noted," she said. Then, engines hot, rolling. The jet moved. Slow at first, a low growl across concrete. Then faster, wind building under her wings as the turbines screamed to full power. Dust swirled across the runway like ghosts returning to the fight. She wasn't rebelling. She was returning. From the observation deck, officers watched as the A-10 tore down the runway, flame trailing from both engines. The nose lifted once, twice, and then it was airborne, climbing into the black. Every radar screen lit up green. She was gone. The colonel's hands clenched around the console. He couldn't stop it now. "Track her," he barked. "Get me every frequency she's using." "Sir, she switched to encrypted comms. We can't trace." He stared at the feed, jaw tight. "Find me her record, every flight log she's ever signed." The tech hesitated. "Sir, her file's classified under Ghostwing. That's level 7. Silence dropped heavier than before. The colonel exhaled, realizing what the name meant. Ghostwing pilots were myths, operatives used in missions that never officially happened, pilots who didn't exist. Out over the desert, the A-10 cut through darkness, moonlight flickering off her fuselage. Inside, Carter's eyes moved over the instruments like reading an old language. Altitude steady, cannon armed. The SEAL's locator beacon still flickering weakly on the HUD. She keyed the mic. "Echo team, this is Cross. You've got 10 minutes of sky left before I'm over you. Mark your targets." A ragged voice answered through static. "Whoever you are, we'll take it." In the command room, the colonel stood in silence, eyes locked on the screen. The jet's signature streaked across the map like a rising pulse. Every officer stopped talking. For the first time that night, control had returned, not through orders, but through her. Miles ahead, enemy radar pings began to multiply. Carter's HUD filled with red dots, surface-to-air signatures. She smiled beneath her oxygen mask. "Let's see if I still remember how to dance." The desert below was a broken mirror of heat and movement. Every flicker of light could have been muzzle flash or a dying flare. Carter steadied her breath, one hand gloved tight around the throttle. The A-10 vibrated like a living creature, low, heavy, certain. On her HUD, the ridgeline stretched out like a scar. Somewhere under that ridge, 6 SEALs were pinned in the dark. She rolled the hog on its side and let the moonlight spill across the canopy. The night was clear enough to see the convoy columns twisting toward the trapped team. Technicals, mounted guns, a single missile truck crawling through sand. She'd seen this play before, long ago, when she flew missions no one admitted existed. Only difference now, no AWACS, no ground control, no command chain. Just her heartbeat, syncing with the engines.
In the command room, the colonel's staff hovered around the main screen, watching her altitude drop. "She's descending too fast," one whispered. "At that angle, she'll pull the wings right off." But the colonel shook his head, his voice low now, almost reverent. "She knows the aircraft better than anyone alive. Just watch." Carter's world narrowed to a thin crosshair and a soft hum. She armed the GAU-8. The panel lights glowed amber, hydraulic pressure perfect. She could hear the guns spool up, 7 barrels spinning into a growl that every soldier in every desert learned to fear. "Echo team, smoke check," she called. "Confirmed. 220 mark, red smoke deployed." She smiled under the mask. "Copy that. Keep your heads down." The ridge exploded in orange. Her first burst cut the sand open, 30-millimeter rounds tracing a perfect line through enemy armor. Every second of fire felt like a heartbeat restored. Down below, the SEALs crawled out of their cover long enough to drag the wounded into the newly carved trench. She wasn't attacking. She was erasing the distance between command and survival. The colonel watched the feed, disbelief turning to something else. Respect, maybe. Awe. Around him, the younger officers who'd been shouting moments ago stood frozen. No one dared speak while the thunder of the GAU-8 rolled through the speakers. Then Carter pulled up, low enough that sand followed her wings like surf. Missiles streaked from the ridge, bright lines of heat rushing toward her 6. "Missile lock," a voice from the drone operator called. "I see it," she said, calm as silence itself. She rolled hard right, released flares, and dove. The sky bloomed with fire, one missile detonating behind her tail, another spiraling off into nothing. Inside the cockpit, warning tones screamed, hydraulic temp climbing. She flipped manual control, bypassed the fault, and brought the hog level again. Below, she saw the convoy scattering, burning trails cutting through the dark. The SEALs were moving north, toward extraction coordinates. In the command center, one of the young officers whispered, "Sir, she's buying them time." The colonel didn't answer. He just whispered to himself, "No, she's doing what we were supposed to." Carter checked fuel, barely half a tank left, one engine running hot. She adjusted trim and scanned radar again. The red signatures were fading, but a single heavy contact remained, larger, slower, setting up for retaliation. She squinted at the data. That's not armor. That's artillery. A mobile railgun buried into the ridge, powered up and locked onto her heat signature. Carter's HUD flashed crimson. She whispered into the comm, steady as ever. "Echo team, get ready to move. I'm about to light up the whole sky."
The first shot ripped the night in half. It didn't sound like a weapon, it sounded like the earth itself had exhaled. A white arc crossed the horizon, barely missing the A-10's left wing, and detonated behind her like a minions, but she ignored them. The railgun was massive, mounted on a ridge platform, powered by a field generator scavenged from an old base. One direct hit from that thing would turn the hog into vapor. In the command room, the radar operator shouted, "Contact confirmed. That's a rail battery. Range 10 clicks. Tracking fast." The colonel froze. He knew what that meant. No aircraft gets close enough to neutralize that. It's suicide. Then, almost to himself, he added, "Unless you're her." Carter leveled out, checking the terrain ahead. The ridge was steep, lined with black glass rock and shredded vehicles from old wars. She'd flown over it once, years ago, when she was still officially part of the 74th. She remembered the code they used for that valley, the grave cut. Fitting. Her altimeter ticked down, 6,000 feet, 4, 2. She switched to terrain-following radar and cut all non-essential systems to minimize heat signature. The cockpit dimmed to blood red. Her voice came through the comms, steady, even bored. "Command, I'm making a low run. Do not interfere." The colonel leaned into the mic. "Carter, that platform will tear you apart." She smiled faintly. "Then it won't have time to aim." She wasn't running from the blast. She was becoming the vector that stopped it. Down on the ridge, enemy spotters screamed into radios. The warthog's silhouette flashed between canyon walls like a phantom, invisible until it was already too close. The railgun fired again. Carter jerked the stick, rolling inverted, the projectile cutting through the space she'd been a heartbeat before. Shockwaves rattled the cockpit. Warning lights flared. She exhaled. Too close. Let's finish this. Her thumb slid over the weapons toggle. Maverick missiles armed. Target lock chirped once, twice. She dove through the canyon, hugging the ridge until the alarm tone went solid. Then she pulled back on the stick and released both missiles. They screamed forward, white trails splitting the night. The control room erupted as the railgun vanished in a fireball. Heat bloom registered across every monitor, and for a second, static replaced sound. When the feed returned, the ridge was gone, just molten rock and rising smoke. The colonel's voice dropped to a whisper. She did it. But the victory was short-lived. "Sir, we lost your signal. Telemetry's gone. No IFF beacon, no transponder." "Was she hit?" I can't tell. There's too much interference." The room went silent again, the same silence that had followed her rise hours ago. The colonel lowered his head, the memory of her voice echoing through the headset. Out in the black sky, Carter's A-10 limped through turbulence, one engine coughing, hydraulics bleeding pressure. The console flickered, sparks scattering across her gloves. She tapped the panel once, a pilot's old superstition, and looked east. The stars had returned. She keyed a short transmission, untraceable, encrypted. "Echo Team, you're clear. Move to your extraction. I'll draw what's left their way." A soft laugh answered through static. "Whoever you are, we owe you one." "No, just get home." Fuel was low, controls sluggish, but she could still fly, always could. As the SEALs began their retreat, radar pings flared again, multiple contacts rising from the canyon's far edge. Not armor this time, aircraft, enemy interceptors, inbound and closing fast. Carter looked at the horizon, at the faint line of dawn ahead, and tightened her grip on the stick. "All right," she murmured, voice calm as the sky. "Let's see who gets the last sunrise." The horizon was bleeding into light when the first interceptors appeared. Two dark silhouettes slicing through dawn, wings tipped with the shimmer of heat-seeking payloads. Her sensors screamed warning she no longer needed. She'd flown against faster jets before, but never while nursing a crippled engine and half her hydraulics gone. The Hog wasn't built for speed. It was built to outlast. She pushed the throttle until it hit the stop and listened as the right turbine coughed, caught, and roared again. The airframe shook, every rivet vibrating with the strain, but she smiled. "Come on, old girl, one more dance."
On the ground, the SEAL extraction convoy rattled across broken terrain toward the rescue zone. Through the crackle of radio static, they could still hear her voice. Calm, clipped, impossibly composed. Echo, maintain course. Don't stop for anything. Copy that, the team leader replied. Are you? The transmission cut off in a burst of static and overlapping radar tones. In the command room, the colonel stood rigid, headset pressed to one ear. Track her, he barked. Trying, sir. She's switching altitudes too fast. It looks like she's using the canyons to break lock. He nodded slowly. That's what ghost-wing pilots did when they wanted to disappear. She wasn't fighting to survive. She was fighting to finish what command had abandoned. Parter dove into the canyon again, sun flashing off her canopy. The interceptors split formation, one climbing high for a lock, the other diving low to trap her between missile arcs. Her HUD blinked, then dimmed completely. Power drain from the hydraulic bypass. She flew blind for a breath, trusting muscle memory instead of instruments. Missile tone, 2 beeps, then 4. She snapped the hog sideways, dropped flares, and rolled through her own smoke. The first missile died in fire. The second skimmed the canyon wall and detonated behind her tail. Shrapnel peppered the fuselage. Warning lights erupted across the board.
In the command room, a tremor rippled through the air as the radar signature flickered. The colonel's voice dropped to a whisper. She's hit. But above the desert, Carter steadied the stick with both hands, one engine howling, the other coughing smoke. Still here, she muttered. Still ugly. She leveled out low over the sand and spotted the high interceptor arcing for another pass. They'd underestimated the hog. Everyone always did. She waited, counting heartbeats. 1, 2. Then pulled hard into a climb, nose tilting toward the rising sun. The glare blinded her pursuer for half a second. Enough. She flipped the master arm switch and squeezed the trigger. The GAU-8 thundered, spitting a storm of depleted uranium rounds. The interceptor erupted in a burst of flame that scattered like sunrise through shattered glass. Splash 1, she said softly. Her radar pinged again. The second jet was circling wide, trying to stay behind her damaged tail. She rolled, dove, felt the airframe groan. The hydraulics whined like a living thing in pain. She glanced at the fuel gauge, critically low. The colonel's voice came faintly through comms now, fragmented. Carter, break off. You've done enough. She didn't answer. The hog trembled but held steady. Ahead, the ridge she'd bombed hours ago still smoked, sunlight spilling through the haze. The SEAL's convoy was nearly at the extraction zone. They were going to make it. Her breathing slowed, her heartbeat sinking with the fading pulse of the engines. She could feel every vibration through the seat, every whisper of wind along the fuselage. The second interceptor closed in behind her, missile lock solid. She keyed her mic one last time. Colonel, tell them they're clear. She pulled up into the sun, straight into the blinding light, just as the missile alarm screamed one final tone. The sky erupted white and the hog vanished into dawn. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but light. The explosion bloomed across the horizon, brilliant and silent, then faded into a slow-moving cloud that glowed like fire trapped in glass. The command room went dead quiet. Screens flickered, radar sweeps froze, and even the hum of the ventilation seemed to stop. "Did we lose her?" one of the young officers whispered. The colonel didn't answer. He leaned closer to the display, eyes searching for the static, for a shape, a pulse, anything that could defy that silence. Years of command had taught him to expect loss, but not like this. Not from someone who rose without orders,
who took control without permission, who had turned chaos into coherence simply by standing up. And then, faintly, a blip returned, a single, irregular signal, too weak to lock onto, too strong to be interference. "Sir," the comms tech's voice cracked. "That's her transponder. She's still airborne." The colonel straightened. "Patch it through, now."
Out in the open sky, Carter's cockpit was a haze of smoke and light. Her oxygen gauge flashed red, one engine fully gone, the other sputtering in protest. The right wing had taken a hit but held, pitted with shrapnel scars. Every switch she'd touched felt heavier than it should have, every motion slower. But she was flying, barely. Her voice came through the comm line, quiet and steady as ever. "Command, this is Cross 2784. Target eliminated. Team clear." No one in the room spoke. The colonel swallowed hard, his voice finally finding its way out. "Carter, you're out of fuel and half your systems are gone. Bring it home." She smiled faintly beneath the cracked visor. "Home's a broad word, Colonel." "Don't start with philosophy now," he said, the edge in his tone softened by something close to reverence. "We'll guide you in. Just give me a heading." She looked east, where dawn had fully broken. The desert glowed gold, and through the drifting haze she could see the convoy, tiny, moving specks now free of pursuit. She'd done what she came for. That was enough. She wasn't supposed to lead. She just refused to let silence win. Below, the SEAL extraction bird finally came into view, banking low over the desert floor. One of the operators inside looked up at the sky, just in time to see the A-10 break through the smoke trail, limping but alive. The gunship's silhouette against the sunrise looked like something out of a legend, half machine, half spirit. "Holy hell," one of them breathed. "She's still flying." Carter keyed the mic again, voice weakening but calm. "Echo team, you're clear to aboard. Confirm when airborne." The reply came seconds later. "We're up, all accounted for. And whoever you are, thank you." Her lips curved. "Don't mention it." In the command center, the colonel's staff watched as her blip slowed, altitude dropping steadily. He pressed the transmit key one last time. "Cross, your base vector is clear. Runway 21 is open. You've got clearance for immediate landing." She didn't respond. The A-10 was descending, but not toward base. The radar track curved southwest, toward a flat stretch of desert where the sun hit the ground like molten copper. "Carter, acknowledge," he said again, louder this time. Her voice came back, soft, almost like an echo. "Negative, Colonel. I've got nowhere to park this thing that won't scare your mechanics. I'll find my own dirt." He wanted to argue, to demand she follow orders for once, but when he heard her tone, the peace in it, he stopped. "You'll run out of lift." "I've been running on lift that shouldn't exist for a long time, sir." The line cracked, static rising. On the final transmission, she whispered something he almost missed. "Tell them it's done, and tell them I remembered how to fly." Then the signal faded. Out in the desert, the A-10 dropped low, gear extended. The left engine flamed out completely, the right still pushing enough thrust to guide her toward a dry basin. She flared at the last second, touching down hard, sliding through sand and dust, until the nose dipped and the aircraft came to rest, half buried in silence. For a long while there was nothing. Then, through the shimmering heat, a figure stepped out of the cockpit. Helmet off, visor cracked, hair whipped by desert wind. She walked a few steps away, turned once to look at the hog, and rested her hand on the scarred fuselage. The colonel's team located the wreck half an hour later by drone. When they zoomed in, the canopy was open, the seat empty. Only footprints in the sand,
led away from the cooling jet, fading into the rising heat. The colonel stood at the window of the command room, watching the first transport carrying the rescued SEALs approach the base. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. Everyone in that room knew what she'd done and what it had cost. One of the young officers broke the silence. "Sir, do we file her as KIA or MIA?" The colonel turned slowly, his eyes still on the horizon. He said, "Neither. File it as Ghost Wing, operational." He looked once more at the desert where the signal had died. The sun had fully risen, painting everything in gold. On the tarmac, a battered A-10 was towed in at dusk, its panels cracked and paint scorched. No one saw who flew it back. No one ever would. But on the nose, beneath layers of sand and soot, the words were still visible. Cross 278-4. And as the engines cooled, the wind carried a faint, metallic hum across the hangar, like the echo of wings that refused to fall silent.